Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining 12 Reasons Why. And we are here with Saeid Dahl. Saeed is Microsoft MVP and Microsoft Learning Expert. Saeed, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, perfect. Before I start, thanks you having me. It's very great to have be part of this kind of initiative that you started to share. It's great. It shouldn't be always technical, but it should be informal and also some kind of soft discussion about Azure Word, Azure services, and so on. So thank you so much that you invited me to this 12 reason program, let's say. And about myself, yeah, my name is Saeid Dahl, Microsoft MVP, Microsoft MCT, Microsoft Learn Expert. And basically, I love everything around Microsoft. I don't know when it's started, but I'm actually in the middle of things that I can say my life is separated in two parts, two love side. One with my wife, and second, it's with Microsoft.
Not sure whether your wife will be very happy to listen this, Saeed. I hope your door is
Yeah,
closed there.
actually, she knows it. She knows it, so no worries. And in terms of the work wise, I'm working with a company called Opheads, and I'm Azure technical lead of Opheads Nordic. So basically, helping customers to enjoy when they move to Azure Cloud and helping them to use it in a best way based on the best practices. So it's me.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much, Said. And based on the years that I have known Said, Said is really great, and he's working relentlessly in technology areas and specifically in communities. And he's very much keen to help people around specific Microsoft technology areas. Since we both are Microsoft MVPs, we are working in more or less a lot of Microsoft technology areas. And one of those technology areas we are going to discuss today. So, Said, I believe today's discussion we are going to have around hybrid cloud, right? So,
Yeah.
basically, I wanted to understand, and for the beginners, what's the concept of this hybrid cloud? And I'm talking to lots of organizations, and they are always about, okay, we should be going to cloud, we should be moving everything over. But where exactly this hybrid cloud scenario comes in, and why organizations are looking at it?
Yeah, that's a great question to be a start actually to share because yeah, I've got this question several times from different people, and as you mentioned it already, I've been presenting a lot of topics around how you should migrate to the cloud and how you can handle it, and in some cases maybe you cannot. Then we have to see different side of this kind of migration things. Being on cloud, having everything on Azure, it's always amazing, but it's not the scenario you can always face in the real world scenarios. So how we can leverage hybrid environment and what is exactly is. So when we have on-premise resources, for example, private cloud like a data center, or even you have other resources in the other clouds like GCP, AWS, or IBM, Oracle, doesn't matter. So basically, when your resources distributed across a different environment, can be on-premise or other clouds, then that's the point that maybe you cannot move fully to cloud. So that basically you need to have a solution to handle those resources that you have in different environment, and then we name it hybrid cloud. So then you have resources that you need to manage outside of your beautiful Azure environment. So that's the fundamental of that.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Yeah, that sounds interesting, and that must be really helpful for the industry areas where they want more of keeping their data in their premises and making sure everything is in their control. And still, they want to move a few things up to cloud, or if they want to get cloud. Yeah, but from Microsoft perspective, and I believe since we both are more Microsoft guys, so but tool that we have is Microsoft Azure Arc, right? Am I correct in
Yes, yes,
saying
yes.
that? Yeah. So how Microsoft Arc is helping in achieving this hybrid cloud scenarios, and what exactly is the benefits around that?
Yeah. You mentioned about very good things to share. So you mentioned that some companies, organizations, they cannot move fully to cloud because of a lot of limitations that they might face. For example, regulation, GDPR, some compliance issue, or if they already spend a lot of monies to create those kind of infrastructure for themselves. So for those companies that they basically wanted to have everything on cloud and they cannot do it right now, Azure Arc is the solution. So how Azure Arc helps these kind of customers? So Azure Arc is a service that Microsoft provided to be able to help those customers that they have their on-premise or other clouds environment, but still they can leverage Azure environment to manage those. So it's a kind of centralized management for outside of Azure boundaries. So you can have VMs or other resources that they are located in the other environments. However, you can manage them in Azure Arc. So this is the main point of having Azure Arc. But one thing that I would like to mention here, and it's really interesting, if you check Gartner report, for those that they don't know Gartner, what is Gartner is a big company institute that they basically creating reports based on a lot of topics. And one of those interesting topics is related to hybrid cloud. And for 3 years in a row, Microsoft is king of hybrid environment. And that's why we have Azure Arc. Azure Arc is the best way to be able to communicate with on-premise or other cloud and having a centralized management inside Azure. So it's really a king.
Lovely. Yeah, no, definitely. So that sounds to me like a win-win from keeping your resources and even the resources that cannot be migrated on premises, but still getting all the good stuff from Azure side and managing everything from one portal itself. Yeah, that sounds really fascinating, and definitely a lot of organizations will have use cases around that. And basically, when we are looking at these kind of migration scenarios, there is always something left on premises, and it always a big pain that how we manage that. Now we have Azure administrators, and now we have to keep people for on premises as well. Those kind of scenario, definitely, yeah, it will be really fun. But just from the perspective of operations and even getting started with Azure Arc, right? How easy it is, or do we need like loads of softwares and tools and configurations on the servers and systems to get started? Actually,
Yeah, it's a really good question. Basically, it's easy as you are drinking water. And it's really important because when you are thinking about these kind of scenarios, you may think, okay, if I want to communicate from my on-premise environment, let's say a Windows server or a Linux machine, what should I do? Should I open ports on my VMs? Because imagine that you want to connect to one of these machines with like for if it's the Windows machine, then you need to open a remote port to be able to communicate with that machine, right? But the
okay,
interesting part of Azure Arc, you do not need to open any port to your on-premise environment. So you can keep your firewall, you can have it, as it is, and then you just need to install the agent on your resources to be able to communicate with outbound connection to Azure environment and Arc services. And the other interesting part about Azure Arc is if you have a lot of policies that you cannot even open outbound connection to your servers, then you can go through this disconnected scenario. So basically, you are going to deploy a proxy or using your VPN connection to your Azure environment to create this connection in a very secure way. But how basically we can leverage, for example, Arc enabled server, which is the most common scenario inside Azure Arc for the implementation and basically project your resources to Azure environment. It's pretty much simple. Either you can use a very simple script that you can actually download from Arc and run it on your PC, or like let's say it's Windows Server that it's located even in other clouds or in on-premise environment. And then after a while, you can see the resource is available there. An interesting part is in new version of Windows servers, you can already see the Arc enabled system. It's available there. You just need to follow the wizard to be able to onboard your server to Arc's services.
Oh,
However, how is it in larger scale environment when we are talking about, for example, I have a customer that they have 300 servers. Should I run the scripts one by one? No, it won't work ever, right?
yeah.
So basically we can go through the other scenarios. For example, you can use Ansible if it's Linux environment, or you can use SCCM, System Center for the Windows, or either you can use group policy in Active Directory. You can easily create a script, push the policy to the servers, and then they will be on board to your environment. And as soon as they onboard to your environment, then the party will be a start.
Okay. So that sounds like really easy in terms of even if you have to do a scale deployment, and even if you have like a different flavors in your environment or Linux and Windows, it's not like a pro Microsoft thing that you go with only Windows servers and Windows machines. It will have the ease. So even if you have Linux servers, it will be quite easy to onboard them.
Definitely, yes.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds really amazing. But one thing that I oftenly see with like it's around, I would say it's a myth around Azure Arc, is it's a server management tool, right? And I believe most of my customers, and whenever I'm talking to people, they have been motivated with the fact of, okay, I will onboard this and I will get extended security updates. That's I believe one of the key drivers going to Azure Arc was. But what all it can do other things as well, as far as I'm aware of. So what all of these things basically?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, when we are talking about Azure Arc, this part is something that I always share in my presentation in any conferences or
Mhm.
webinars. So, from my perspective, and I believe it's originally like this, if we want to see three happy departments in
Mhm.
your environment, you can use Azure Arc. So, first of all, it's IT and IT administrators. So basically, it's coming. It's related to that part that you just mentioned about management. It's
Yeah.
easy to manage the servers. You can onboard them. Then you have patch management, security things that you can apply, even policy, or even alerts and so on, monitoring system and so on. So it's the part related to the administrators. But there are two more areas as well. Then we have for developers. Why it's important for developers? I can give you one example that you can see how much is important for for developers to using Azure Arc. When you have Kubernetes services clusters in your on-premise environment, and then you can leverage, for example, Git or Azure DevOps for your Kubernetes environment. For those that they are developers, they know how much it's hard to get there, and then you have a lot of security things around that you need to make sure that it's following based on the best practices. But with Azure Arc, basically you can onboard your Kubernetes cluster to Azure Arc, and after that you have a huge flexibility that you can communicate with your GitHub or even Azure DevOps, and then you can use RBAC, role-based access control on your Kubernetes cluster, and then you can easily have a very good CI/CD connection to your Kubernetes environment, and then you have a lot of developers happy in your environment. And the third part is related to security team. Why it's important, but it's all about the zero trust environment, right? When we are talking about zero trust, then we have a lot of option there. Not only rollback access control, sorry, yes, role based access control,
Yeah.
but also imagine, I just mentioned, you do not need to open any port to your environment. You have disconnected scenario as well. Then you have patch management and assessment, security assessment for your SQL databases if you onboard them. So it's huge for the security as well. Then you can have a centralized management for monitoring, security alerts, and so on. And then it's a unique environment, doesn't matter the resources distributed to which places, then you can follow the same policies, compliance across all the environment that you have. So if you have one policy for your VMs inside Azure, you can apply them for your on-premise environment as well. So three area I would say going to cover. It's not only management.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, no. So in that case, you're making definitely, as you said, three teams happy. If the security team is happy and operations team is happy, and what was the third one you mentioned?
Security,
Yeah,
IT administrators.
yeah. So basically, if it is ticking that much of boxes, definitely it's worthwhile exploring around that. And is there any innovative, or I'd say like a more of unexpected kind of use you have seen, like where you have been amazed with Azure Arc implementation? Okay, yeah, these guys are using for something else, or someone thought of some innovative use of it.
Yeah,
Is there
actually,
any scenario?
I have one interesting scenario that it's part of the one of the interesting services, or let's say the use cases that you can have on Azure Arc. So I'm going to explain it in briefly to understand what was the scenario.
Yeah,
So we
sure.
had a customer that they basically had a very isolated environment regarding their Active Directory. So they had two different Active directories, one for isolated environment in their on-premise environment, and the second one was related to that one. It was pretty much public for Entra ID as well, connected to Entra ID as well. So the scenario was when you had a new employee, that person should be able to go through the onboarding process, not only for Entra, but also for the isolated environment, Active Directory environment. So the scenario was a bit complex because we haven't had that connection to be able to run or connect current onboarding system, which was based on Entra ID, to be able to create the account on an isolated Active Directory at the same time. So in this scenario, we onboarded that isolated Active Directory to Arc with the proxy method, and then we used Azure Automation Agent together with Azure Arc. And it means when the onboarding process started with Entra ID and it's ended with the Entra ID, the next step was calling webhook on Azure Automation to start using the same information to be able to create one account for the developer in the isolated Active Directory. So it's a funny scenario, but it would work, right? Basically, we have created a full automation even when the customer had a very isolated environment, and we remove a lot of manual tasks when it comes to the onboarding offboarding employee in their environment.
So you were able to run your automation account and those automation account automation scripts directly onto your Active Directory
Yes.
using Azure Arc,
Yes.
and yeah, that sounds a really interesting use case. And here's me, like I did an Azure Arc implementation, and I was just able to use the managed identity, and I was so happy afterwards. Like it was a dream come true kind of scenario. Like one of my servers needed to use one of like it was supposed to do some stuff on a storage account, I believe so, and we had to use some sort of identity, and the guys said either you go with managed identity or you go with the storage account key, which is not always that secure.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, we will onboard it to Azure Arc. We will give the machine an identity and that will be used. And I was fascinated with this. There is an on-premises machine with managed identity. And that your scenario sounds like so much better than that. Like you have like so many moving pieces around this. No, that sounds really good. So, any specific challenges you faced, like with Azure Arc implementations on this specific or in general, right? So, when let's say people are doing the implementation, is there something they need to be watching for specifically?
Basically, one of the challenges that I had, I would say it happened twice. So when you want to use large scale scenario to be able to onboard a lot of servers in, for example, using group policies, it can be a bit challenging because you need to consider a lot of things when you want to create a script, share the script in some places to be able to communicate with other servers, and how you can create the policy to be able to push to the servers. So for those environments that they have different VLANs or connectivities or different, or for example, multi-forest environment or multi-domain environments, it can be a bit challenging because then you need to identify how you want to go through the best practices, how you want to design these kind of onboarding scenarios.
Mhm.
Then it's the important part. But the best way to do that, based on my experience, is you need to identify what is your limitation today. For example, you need to write down how many VLANs you have, which servers can communicate with which kind of shared resources to be able to get download the agents and run the script from a domain controller. And then you need to identify how you want to name your servers and how you want to onboard them. The most important part here is the new option that you have in Azure Arc is data center management. So basically, when you onboard servers to a specific, for example, data center name in Azure Arc,
Mhm.
uh, basically you need to name them in a correct way. Otherwise, it's really hard to onboard them. And it's based on region, resource group that you are going to onboard. So you need to, a bit, you know, uh, make sure that you are doing in a correct way. Otherwise, it can be a bit challenging.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, no, definitely. That data center management bit that you mentioned, that sounds really interesting. So is that what we are saying that like I know we used to tag all the resources, all the Azure Arc servers getting onboarded into some city location and etc. etc. Like how does that going to be different? Is that going to be more of a, from like optics perspective, or is it going to give us some little bit of
Yeah,
extra
it's going to
features?
be more extending soon because Microsoft is going to add more options there. But the current view that you can get there, as soon as you onboard to a specific data center, basically you can get a very good view of the servers that you have, any type of policies that you applied, and then if there is any problem with the agents, instead of having for example, if you have 300 servers from different locations or region, then it's hard to have everything in one view. And for these kind of environments, you don't have one admin, right? You have several admins per each
Yeah.
region, and then you can give them access to their regions, so they can control their regions, and it doesn't matter if they need to have access to others. So basically, it's a kind of isolation based on the location of the services or how you want to isolate them. Then it's more or less management part of onboarding the servers in
Mhm.
specific data centers.
Yeah, I hope I'm not going into any of the NDA territories because I don't want this to get taken down.
True.
But that sounds really good, and I definitely need to give this a try just to understand how the data center management more works. Specifically, and one area of Azure Arc, like I'm always quite interested in, and as I am more of a security guy, right? So when we are introducing Azure Arc, like what level of security we are getting additionally, or from governance perspective, what all we can do in terms of enforcing on the servers and Kubernetes or whatever we are onboarding to Azure Arc.
Yeah. So let's categorize them in different ways. So, for example, you can have patch management and security that you can apply.
Hmm.
And in the other way, for the SQL servers, basically you can have assessment. So it means if you onboarded your SQL servers into Arc, then you are able to get a very good assessment if there is any problem with your SQL servers. And the other part is related to the policies that you can apply to your environment. And I think it's the most important part, because for the security people, as you mentioned, it's important to have the same policy or compliance to be applied in across the environment. Then instead of having multi policies applied to different environments, then you can control them from one centralized management system. And then monitoring, of course, based on the monitoring and all features that you can have on Azure Arc, or let's say Azure environment and ecosystem, then doesn't matter, you can apply different type of monitoring on top of the services. And beside that, one of best things that I can say in terms of the security is Cloud Defender. So Defender for Cloud, it's
Yeah.
one of the interesting service that we have in Microsoft Cloud environment. And then you can onboard your servers, your Kubernetes, your SQL Server into that service, and it means yes, then you can use different Defender for Cloud for this kind of resources as well without any problem.
Okay, so that means you are saying like we are bringing in all the governance that we are currently doing on our Azure environments, everything from policies to Defender for Cloud, and all the good stuff around tagging, all the good stuff around update managers, and everything can be extended.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and basically, Defender for Cloud will work as expected. It will give us all the misconfiguration. It will give us the details, the level of details that it gives us around Azure environments will get the similar. Yeah, that sounds fascinating. And even for from monitoring perspective, everything we are ingesting, all the logs and everything, that will become really easy. If I heard it correctly, right? You will be able
Yeah,
to
exactly.
ingest it at one place, and then you can point your Sentinel or your Azure monitors of the world onto that and get. That sounds interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any favorite service of yours? I know Azure Arc gives a lot of things. Is there anything that you specifically like?
Uh, Personally, I love everything around Azure Arc
Oh,
because
you
it's
have to pick
very.
one. You can't say
Yeah, I
that.
know it's really hard. It's really hard, but basically, I would say Azure Arc for SQL Server is one of the interesting service that I can name it, because uh, nowadays when you have databases in your on-premise or other clouds, one of the hassle that you can have, it's how much you are following, the compliance security and how you keep update your SQL database in terms of the security and patch management. So basically, with this scenario together with Azure Arc, you can make sure that everything is in place. So you have no problem to be worried about the SQL servers, content, and databases if it's not configured in a good way, or that there is any security breach or any problem with the security side of the SQL database. And the other part of that is basically you can extend databases to your on-premise environment. So for some scenarios, if a customer basically don't want to have content or databases inside Azure Cloud, they can have those databases in their on-premise resources, and then they can manage them inside Azure Cloud and leverage, of course, security and patch management behind the scene. So it's a huge service behind that, and Microsoft working, a lot to be able to extend this service and make it better and better. But if I would like to, pick one, it's Azure Arc for SQL servers.
Azure Arc for SQL servers. That sounds interesting as well. Yeah, definitely. So, without breaching the NDA, I would say, what do you think and where it is heading, like from the services perspective in next 2, 3 years, even from adoption in the market, what you're seeing within your customers, how it is?
Yeah, so I can start with something from Microsoft. So Microsoft reports a 304% ROI for 3 years, and it speaks about volume, right? So basically, it's very huge, and Microsoft invested a lot for these services. And there is something behind the scene when we are talking about hybrid environment. from my perspective, until 2027 or maybe sooner, basically 80% of organization and companies prefer to have hybrid environment. And there are a lot of reason behind the scene, right? Regulation, security things, or many other things behind the scene. But that's the point. When we are talking about Azure Arc, we are talking about hybrid environment. And the point is there is no other services like Azure Arc. So it's like a service that it's only provided by Microsoft. And then if you want to start to invest on this service, or if you want to think if any organization is going to have this service up and running in their environment, I definitely say 80% of the organizations needs to invest about that. And in next 2 3 years, most of them are going to use Azure Arc or one of these services are on Azure Arc, because we have Azure Local as well. And the Azure Local is a different scenario. I'm not sure if I have to mention it here or not.
Definitely, Said. We need to have a follow-up session on Azure Local, and basically, that's a really interesting service. I'm quite interested in Azure Local, and that
I'll be
basically
more than happy.
follows, I believe, the same principle as Azure Arc, but more on giving more control to people, going on more
Yeah,
disconnected scenarios and air
exactly.
gap scenarios. That sounds really interesting. That my 12 questions. Do you have anything to add on?
Actually, what I want to add here, it's important to learn more about concept of hybrid cloud, because I'm getting these questions a lot. So as it was the first question that you asked about what is the hybrid cloud, and I think if people understand what is the concept of hybrid cloud, then they can understand the value of Azure Arc. And that's why I love Azure Arc, because I'm a person who is coming from on-premise concepts. So I've been working in this industry for 17 years, and it means I started my journey when we barely use hypervisor like VMware or Citrix. But basically, I know how I should work with servers. And I always thinking, okay, cloud is amazing, everything around Azure is amazing, but how about those people that they cannot move everything to cloud? Then when I get familiar with Azure Arc, I realized, yes, this is what exactly I always looking for, and that's why I love it. So what I can add here, go and learn, because I'm part of Microsoft Learn as well.
Yeah.
Check Microsoft Learn scenarios, check Microsoft Learn documentation. It's huge, it's in detail. And then if you want to learn more, check out videos from Lior Kamrat. He's amazing. I love this guy. I learned a lot of things from him. And basically, he's program manager of Arc, I would
Yeah.
say. And then you have everything that you need to learn after that. And then you can enjoy Azure Arc in your environment.
Lovely, lovely. And I believe Leo is the person who runs the Azure Arc Jumpstart, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, I thank you so much that you
Yeah.
mentioned about that, because I really like talk about Azure Arc Jumpstart as well for those who don't know about that. So to give it some example of what is Azure Arc Jumpstart. When we are talking about Azure Arc or even Azure Local, basically it's hard to get a kind of environment to be able to test these services. It's not like AI, it's not like other services. You need to have on-premise or other cloud to be able to test this service. So that's why Azure Arc Jumpstart project it's huge, because with that said, and with that project, you can have a full scenario to be able to test Azure Arc without any on premise resources. And with Jumpstart, you can basically deploy entire environment and simulate the scenario inside your Azure environment. So you just need to get access to your Azure environment, have a subscription, then use Jumpstart, and then you can test Azure Arc after you run it. And maybe you think, oh, it's going to be huge or complex, but exactly it's not like this. So you just need to follow the documentation of Jumpstart. and just wait for 40 minutes, and after that you will be amazed but by what they have done in jumpstart scenarios. And right now they have a lot of jumpstart things around that. Let's say jumpstart the universe,
Yeah.
uh, jumpstart scenario, jumpstart let me check the name of the things on jumpstart servers, just a second, because there is something called jumpstart scenario universe, which is cool
Yeah.
actually. So yeah, jumpstart scenarios, agora, arcbox, localbox, drop, and gem. And each one of these are one of the important part that you need to learn about hybrid environment and also Azure Arc. So make sure that you check that site. It's jumpstart.azure.com. Easy.
That's lovely. Yeah, that's lovely. And I remember one of while I was starting with it, Azure Arc, it really helped me a lot. That's why I thought I'll mention that as well. Yeah, perfect. And thank you so much, Said. I will bring up Rakshit as well, who was helping us from the background just for a quick peek. Rakshit, do you
Hello.
have any questions?
Well, certainly it feels very good to be here. I've finally broken free from the backstage. And say it was a very nice session and very insightful. And I have to say that the way you adore Microsoft, like your wife, has made me smile. So I have this question for you. From
Mhm.
since I am a student also, so what is the one piece of advice you would give to someone like me to start off with Microsoft Azure?
That's a really good question. So as part of Microsoft learned steps, I would say, you always have to start with Microsoft Learn. And with the new changes that Microsoft Learn team has added basically to Microsoft Learn environment for profiles and other things, basically you can find your path, your learning path easy right now. So they've added a lot of AI things right now into that. So you just need to go there, talk about, write about what you liked about Azure or technology, and then what is your plan for your future. And then it gives you a learning path based on what exactly you mentioned in the description. And it's really great. Beside that, following Microsoft Learn and Microsoft Learn documentation is one of the most part that basically you need to follow. The other part is related to find your happiness around the cloud. This is a very important point, honestly, because when we are talking about Azure, we are talking about more than 170 services. But learning about 170 services, dude, it needs a life. So basically it's really hard. But that's why we have different category, different topics around the Microsoft Cloud and Azure environment. So find the way that you like to work with Azure. It can be data part, it can be security, it can be hybrid environments, basically. As soon as you can find that space in your career and what you want to do, basically you can find the best way to do that. And it's important that you do what you love to do, but not what you want to make money off that. It should be the second part, honestly.
Yeah.
Then you can continue it forever, honestly. But if you start with what should I do to make money, it won't work for a long time.
That's a really good
Thank you so
advice,
much for
Said.
your advice.
That's a really good advice, and hopefully, Rakshit, you would go with that. I'm certain you will look for the first thing that makes money.
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Said.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having
so
me,
much
man.
for joining, and it was really nice talking to you again. And probably I'll see you soon.
Definitely, definitely, and thank you so much that you start this initiative. It's really important to have communities, up and running in a very, friendly way. I would
Yeah,
say that's why I love these kind of discussions around the Microsoft services. You can spend 100 hours to explain things when you have, screen shared about different services, but at the end we are talking about experience and love. If we combine these two together, I believe everyone can enjoy. And the things that you are doing here, it's combination of love, technical, and dedication. So thank you so much for this uh, plan that you started.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your words, kind words, Said. I'll talk to you and have a good rest of the weekend.
Same to you, man. Have a
Enjoy.
good one.
Bye.
Enjoy. Bye bye.